Water for Elephants was the only Tony Award nominee for Best Musical in 2024 to not win a single award. But is this show still worth your time? I saw Water for Elephants on Broadway, and here's what I thought. So first, what is Water for Elephants? What is it about? What is it based on? Water for Elephants is based on the book of the same name. There's also a movie adaptation of that book. It is a separate, unrelated adaptation of the same book. The show follows the story of Jacob as he faces a tragedy at home, and his response to it is to run off and join the circus. Jacob is portrayed by two different actors throughout the show, with Gregg Edelman playing the older version and Grant Gustin playing the younger version through September 1st. The show has announced his final performance date. If you want to see him, you have to see it before then. They have not announced, as of me recording this video, who will be playing the role of younger Jacob after September 1st, which is his final performance date in Water for Elephants. When he arrives at the circus, he quickly meets Marlena, played by Isabelle McCalla, and falls in love with her, but she is already married to August, played by Alexander Nolan, who is the ringleader of the circus, the leader of this circus. And from there, he joins the circus as a veterinarian, and the plot continues. The entire show is told in a flashback from the older Jacob's perspective. He leaves his nursing home to go see a circus performance, and then tells the story that we are watching to two of the circus performers after the performance. Those two circus performers being played by Isabelle McCalla and Alexander Nolan. They double as both circus performers in the present and Marlena and August in the past. That is the main quartet for the show. There's also a significant supporting cast, as well as an ensemble of circus performers. Obviously, in terms of celebrity, Grant Gustin is, at the moment, the most significant name in the cast. Now, with that, I'm going to discuss the show in parts. I'm going to discuss the cast, the spectacle, because this is a big spectacle-driven musical, the written aspect of the show, that being the book and score, and then concluding with the experience as a whole. Now, let's start by talking about the cast. Now, as I've already stated, the cast is mainly made up of a quartet of 4 actors, Gregg Edelman and Grant Gustin playing old and young Jacob, Isabelle McCalla as Marlena, and Alexander Nolan as August. And I would say of the 4, I would say the 2 standouts for me were largely Isabelle McCalla and Alexander Nolan, but that was largely because they were given the strongest material to work with out of the 4, and out of anyone in the show, really. I thought that one of Isabelle McCalla's main songs, Easy, was one of the highlights of the show, but truly all 4 of them are quite strong. It is really just the material that leans me towards those 2 being the standouts. Isabelle McCalla has really an incredible voice. This is my second time seeing her on stage. I saw her when she was in Shucked prior to Water for Elephants on Broadway. Alexander Nolan, this was my first time being introduced to him as an actor, and he is such a great villain in this piece. He's just, you love to hate him throughout the entirety of this show. From the moment you meet him, you hate him instantly, and you only grow to hate him more throughout the show. Grant Gustin is great too. He has a very nice singing voice. He just does not get as many opportunities the way the script is written to really showcase his talents. His big standout moment in the show is really a larger choreography number towards the end of Act 2, which is very impressive, but it's also not solely his moment. And Gregg Edelman really serves as a narrator. And he's very good at that task of holding the show together and providing something of an emotional backing for this very large spectacle musical. But in terms of the cast, I would really say the highlight of the show is not any of these 4, it is the ensemble of circus performers. They are by far the highlight of this show. Whenever they are given an opportunity to do any kind of circus spectacle, that is when this show really shines. And they are all really, really great. You can watch, there is the Tony performance for this show, because they showcase one of the cool spectacle moments from the show. Not the only one, there's a ton of them throughout the entirety of the show. But if you have not watched that and you are considering going to see Water for Elephants, I highly recommend watching that to get a sense of the type of thing that you will be seeing throughout the entirety of this show. That is really the reason to come see this show. It is the circus performers. This is a big spectacle-driven piece with a lot of circus-themed tricks. So those are really the things that you are coming to see in this show, and they really deliver on those. And with that, I will transition into discussing the spectacle aspect of Water for Elephants, which is really, that is the reason to see this show. This show is a massive spectacle. It is very impressive in terms of the spectacle that it offers. But not necessarily in the way you might expect. Like, the set is honestly quite simple. And it is simple really because of the circus acts, in that they really can't, due to how elaborate the circus acts are, have significant set pieces, because they would block the circus performers from being able to do the tricks they do. There are some big set pieces, but they are pieces that can very easily be brought on and off the stage to give the circus performers room, because when they are doing their tricks, the stage is largely bare, because it has to be, because they are utilizing the entirety of the stage for whatever circus element they're doing at that particular moment. It is not the most elaborate set you will have ever seen, but that is largely by design to give the circus performers room. The only element of the spectacle for the show that I do think falls short is the puppets. And that is largely unfair to the show in that Broadway has had an embarrassment of riches in amazing puppets in the last several years and honestly in the last couple of decades. Look at things like The Lion King that runs just up the street from Water for Elephants, or very significantly Life of Pi last year on Broadway. That Life of Pi showcased some of the most impressive puppetry that I have ever seen on a stage. This puppetry is fine. It's not bad by any means. It's just when there has been so much really truly great puppetry on Broadway, good puppetry doesn't necessarily stand out, if that makes sense. I do think it is utilized very well in the show. There are some creative moments with the puppetry, notably a moment in the latter half of Act 2 that I won't spoil because it is a major plot spoiler for the show. I would say the puppets is really the one element of the spectacle for the show that is not truly great, and that is largely just by comparison. But maybe that's only a problem because I've seen a lot of shows with really great puppetry on Broadway. The spectacle is really why you come to see this show. This is probably the best production of Water for Elephants that may ever exist. It is brilliantly directed by Jessica Stone. I sat in the back of the mezzanine to the side for the show. I did not miss a thing. It is brilliantly directed in that all of the major spectacle moments, all of the major plot elements can really probably be appreciated from any seat in this theater. I think I had a better view in a partial view seat for this show than I have had in some full view Broadway seats for shows of the last year. It is very obvious that the direction took into account the sightlines of the theater, and that is something that I will always appreciate. It is a show that knows to throw every bell and whistle at you that it possibly can. And most of those bells and whistles are incredibly impressive. Again, when the circus and spectacle really starts to show is when this show shines. And I will use that as my transition to talking about the written work because I do think this is a great production of a fine show. It's not a bad show by any means, but it's not a great show as written. The spectacle is great. The cast is great. The book and score are fine. I would really recommend going to see this production of Water for Elephants again because I don't know if there's ever going to be a better production of Water for Elephants, and I can't imagine a production of this musical in lesser hands in terms of creative team and in terms of cast and even in terms of budget ever being half as impressive as this one. The book is fine and does a decent enough job of driving the story forward. It is very difficult to write a great Broadway book. This book is good. It does a good job of driving the story forward. I think the weak aspect for me in the show was really the score. That the score all works fine within the context of the show, but I really don't think there are any songs from it that I would be downloading on a cast album. But the songs work well to service the story and move things forward. Again, they all work well in context. I just don't think they are things that I would enjoy outside of the context of the show. And I would say the show really, in terms of score for me, I much prefer the group numbers to the solo numbers. That I think the group numbers in the show are generally far superior to like solos and duets within the show. And the lyrics of the score are often very repetitive. There's one song in the show, Wild, that I swear half of the words in that song are just wild repeated. But I do think the score is better in the group numbers, although that might also be that the group numbers tend to be when there is more circus things happening, and so the group numbers just end up being the better moments in the show. Now I'll transition into talking about the show as a whole and who the show's for if you should go see this show. So again, I would really characterize Water for Elephants as a great production of a fine show. I think that that is my ultimate takeaway from seeing Water for Elephants, that I was thoroughly entertained the entire time I was seeing it. I wasn't sure what I was going to get into going into the show. I had no knowledge of the book before this. I'd never seen the movie. I largely went because of Grant Gustin and Isabelle McCalla, and my appreciation for those two actors was really enough for me to pick up a rush ticket to see this. Side note, I would also state that I was able to get a rush ticket for this show at 3 p.m. I just walked up to the box office and asked if they still had rush tickets at 3 p.m. on a Thursday, and they still did, and I was able to see the show that night. If you are in the city and not able to rush like early in the day, it's always worth asking if a show has rush tickets. Anyways, back to the show. Again, this is a very entertaining production, and I largely credit that to Jessica Stone and the choreography, all of the circus acts, and that this is a production that is so strong, it allows you to, in the moment, forget any of the flaws that there might be in terms of the written piece. This might sound like me saying that I think that the written piece is bad. I don't think it's bad. I think it's fine. I think it is a really great production with a lot of big, showy elements. That if that is what you were looking for, if you were looking for a big, showy musical, that this is a show that you are likely going to appreciate very much because it does that spectacle very well. I think this might be the peak of Water for Elephants as a show. A lot of the shows from this most recent Broadway season, I think, are going to translate very well to when they eventually end up having regional productions, community theater productions, high school productions. I think that there are going to be great regional productions of The Notebook someday. I think that there are going to be great regional productions of The Outsiders someday, whenever those shows leave Broadway in the future. I'm less confident of that in Water for Elephants, in that I think what makes Water for Elephants work is the budget and spectacle that really only Broadway enables. I think it is a really top-tier production of an imperfect show that if you love spectacle and circus, I think you can have a great time at.